So I made a video not too long ago that I was pretty happy with how it came out. The only problem was I thought that the intro was a little bit long-winded. So I'm re-recording the intro right now, and then I'll pop into the original video in a minute. And the video is on the topic of dance and dance notation, which on the surface is probably kind of boring for most of you because a lot of you aren't dancers. But it gets into some really, really weirdly interesting topics very quickly, specifically with the framing that I think I have, which is more on like how technology is going to intervene and help out. So I'm going to talk in the beginning about like how there are different ways to notate dance. And then I'm going to talk about some of the innovations that I've been working on, particularly using Lego to notate this form of dance, which is called tutting, 90-degree angle dancing. And then I'm going to talk about virtual reality and its role and what I think about technology as a continuing role and how it's going to affect not only dance notation, but just the whole practice of dance in the future. So I'm going to just hop into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about is this thing called Labond Notation, which is basically taking a dance a dance sequence and encoding it into something very, very similar to like how music is arranged on a piece of paper. And I guess the last thing I want to call out is that this is my garage. Welcome to my garage. This is this is YouTube production value. I'm just preempting the terrible YouTube comments about garages. I don't know, man. You know, like if I were a network television show, I would feel embarrassed, but I don't. So if this bothers you, you can stop watching now. Anyway, so let's just hop into it. I'm going to talk about Labond notation and hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. One of the things that I learned about, I never actually learned the system itself, is this thing called Labond notation, which is bananas. This stuff is crazy. Okay, so here's an image, and what they did is here's an image of music. I mean, everyone knows what music notation looks like, right? Can I do that? No, that doesn't really work. Okay, so here's music notation. Here's Labond notation right next to it, and then there's like all these like crazy graphs and charts. Like what is going on here? Like I don't know how this notation system works, other than to say it's crazy and amazing, and like a few people actually know how to use it. So here's like different notations for different body parts, and then different directions for each body part, high, middle, or low, and like the staff is basically just the whole body through time. Yeah, that's sort of like one of the, in academia at least, that's sort of one of the main systems that is out there. I don't know how much people use it. Look, I'm going to try a few dance systems, or rather dance genres that I know, dance styles that I know, and see what sort of notation systems they have. I haven't done this yet, so this is going to be a fun ride. Okay, swing dancing notation. Okay, that's pretty dope. There's some character set. I mean, this is... Presumably, I would be able to hand this notation system to a swing dancer who is probably not most swing dancers, but some swing dancers who are versed in this, and they'll be like, okay, and they can whip this out on the floor. I would hazard to guess, not knowing the swing dance community, that it would be less than 1%. I could totally be wrong. Hey, look, here's the Wikipedia entry for dance notation. This is La Cucaracha in dance. This gives me no indication. I've been dancing for like 20 years. I have no idea what I'm... Here's me. I think like this is the stage here. And I have to start and... Oh, I can make it bigger. Okay, I can... Oh, no. I start here. I'm just like looking at the arrow. Presumably I start here and I walk in zigzag and then whip around while doing this shape or something, and my legs are doing this. Okay, that's that. Okay, let's see what other dance. Okay, waltz. Waltz seems really structured. Yeah, no. Okay, so I don't think I need to belabor the point that this is just bananas. This is just... The best way to learn how to do the waltz is to not read this shit. Pardon my French, but the best way to actually do this is to go find a master, right? Find somebody who's actually good at this, who can teach you. And this is kind of crazy. It's very inefficient. most very serious dancers that I know, they get on a plane and they find the masters that they love and they hang out with them. Or, if they're not fortunate enough to be able to do that, they just find the people in the neighborhood. And you get these really weird, deeply seated regionalities of dance forms. And you can tell, with music... No, I shouldn't talk about other forms like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know much about music. I do know that it's in dance, the regionalities are very specific. Sometimes it feels like you could be like from the east side of town or from the west side of town, and you have very, very different dance styles, right? I would have to think that the regionalities, the divisions of the regionalities are much more, or they run much deeper, and the differences between each format runs deeper because these systems are so different, and because we don't really have, at least, okay, here's the deal. When it comes to poetry, for example, everyone has access to the internet, and the amount of the craft that is mediatable, because we have a common set of letters and we have a common set of conventions of capitalization or whatever, I can post stuff on the internet and it sort of equalizes because everyone on the internet can sort of experience primarily the format as it stands. When it comes to dance, it's just sort of not the case. You got to be in front of the person who you want to learn from. So, okay, I'm going to stop talking about this particular part. But what I do want to talk about next is a format of dance that I love doing. So, I was talking about the waltz and swing dancing, and those are probably things that you are familiar with. This particular format of dance, his name is Kai, and he's one of my buddies in the liquid dance community. Liquid dancing is this sort of dancing, and one of the important things about this sort of dancing is that it requires you to have a sort of a deeper understanding of space around your body in a rather, I wouldn't say scientific approach, but maybe like a geometric and mathematical approach. And this particular subsection that he's outlining here, he's saying the grid is a series of human body positions that form a framework for how to move the body in a way that will yield a perfect 90 degree and 180 degree angles from top. Okay, I guess I'm going to read the whole thing. I didn't realize it was this long. For 180 degree angles from top, side, front, and perspectives at all times. The grid is where the human body and the aesthetics of geometry align, allowing movement through beautiful, scalable concepts and the ability to seamlessly interlink otherwise disparate movement styles together in cohesive wholes. I think that is actually quite a good summation of what is going on here. But to help distill that a bit, basically the dance style looks like this. This is like a pictogram that outlines many of the pieces, this particular image, but the dance style sort of looks like this. So it's only 90 degree angles, right? That's the game that you're playing when you're doing this thing. And anyway, that dance style is called tutting, and that comes from King Tutankhamun. So basically Egyptian. But if you go to King Tut, I don't know how to spell that. Is that right? Okay, Google can fix it for me. I don't know, there's this very pictorial thing going on, and I'm just giving you a little bit of the history of the dance, particularly actually Bugs Bunny. This is actually an important clip. I think it's this one. Oh, there. That's actually a little bit of history here. Boogaloo Sam gets King Tut from Bugs Bunny. I don't want to play the video because of rights issues probably, but I don't know. That's only 51 seconds. Okay, great. So basically Bugs Bunny emerges. Bugs Bunny emerges and this apparently is an important part of the history of. So Bugs Bunny is like trying to hide from the dog by adopting these shapes from. Oh, thanks for nothing. adopt all these shapes, right? And these shapes are all 90-degree angles. So that's the history of the dance form. I'm sorry, I spent way too much time talking about that. Anyway, what is cool about that, though, is that Kai has been doing some really interesting work in documenting this. Like this, which is like a dope video. Has 7 grid patterns that he's sort of calling out with different sort of notation systems in video format. Now, I really like the idea of using video to help notate. And in fact, that's sort of the de facto, usually not with these superposition, like the graphics superimposed on top of them. Usually the video is just like, when you notate, okay, I feel like I'm sensing myself getting hyped up and super geeky. I want to like be a little bit more objective. Okay, so typically when it comes to dance notation and what is accepted in the court of law, and I don't want to get too deep into this because there's been a lot, but I do want to talk a little bit about it because there's been a lot lately about the topic, particularly with Fortnite and how it is either borrowing or stealing, depending on how you view it, from generally internet culture and dance movement stuff, certain dance moves or certain dance styles, I guess. Anyway, the question of what notation is, currently it just is video. That's generally the way dancers notate their work. If you're a choreographer, you'll do a bunch of work and you'll videotape it, and that videotape is the source material. It's similar to like how a play is just the words on a page. That videotape is actually the record, and so that's how important video is to dance. And Kai is doing this really cool thing where he's notating on top of it with annotations, right? And I love a lot of this work, and I'll post a link to this Pinterest board in the description below this video. And you can link through to see this thing and the 7 sequences that he's presenting. But basically, one of the things that I realized was I wanted to start notating dance in novel ways. So I've been thinking about it particularly in the context of virtual reality. But before I get there, I want to talk a little bit about this other dorky thing that I've done, which is Lego. Oh, dorkiness. Okay, so so this particular software that I found is called Bricklink Studio, and it allows you to just type in whatever you want. So if I want like a 5 or a 10 by 10 flat brick, I can do that and just sort of drag it out here. And let the geekiness ensue, because you can basically produce any brick that you want that exists in the existing Lego catalog, and put it where you want it to. And here, what I've done is I've used Lego to help me notate this particular dance form of tutting. Now, obviously, Lego is not going to be the de facto standard for most dance styles, because most dance styles aren't strictly 90 degrees. This just happens to fit very, very well for my needs. This is sort of where I ended up, but let me show you where I began. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I could just notate my arm positions. So here is my right hand down here, and then my right hand pointed the opposite direction, and this is my right elbow, right shoulder. So this is my first move, the second move, the third move. And so this move sequence is called a scale, is referred to as a scale. So this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll show you that. That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So from here it goes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So this particular sequence I learned from a dancer who learned from a dancer before him, etc., etc. The guy I learned it from was Hadouken, and I have videos to talk about that in further detail later on. Another thing that I did is I did this annotation in Photoshop, and I'll show you me walking through the sequence when it cycles again. Boop, 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 boop. All right, cool. And I think like whoa, Lorem Ipsum. Okay. What I love about the ability to visualize this I mean, I didn't get to this Photoshop thing until much later because my work was I did this and then I was like futzing around with some keyboard shortcuts and I accidentally typed 1. And what 1 does is it gives you one particular angle view of it, right? So if you take all the shoulder Lego bricks and superimpose them, and 2 is the opposite direction of that, then you get this really weird, interesting tree shape. And this is basically all the moves superimposed one on top of the other. So here's the right hand to the right, left, bottom, top, and then side, up, over, right? And so I decided to sort of graph that out and chart that out different ways. And what I'm particularly why I'm so enamored by this is like, I'm trying to imagine, I had to learn this tut sequence by going to a conference. I like flew to like Chicago and like hung out with Hadouken, and he explained this thing to me and I had to drill it, and then I had to like call him back on video chat later, I think, to like get the rundown again. Oh no, we recorded this and put it on YouTube, but it, you know, this is like every time I revisited this thing, I had to watch this video, which took a long time. Like this current video is taking a long time as well. But now a part of me wonders, well, maybe if I can present this information as an infographic alongside a video, so that you watch the video once and then you get the infographic and you can refer to it later, maybe that can help consolidate that idea. Or maybe, you know, this Photoshop illustration can sort of do that as well, just immediately. Or maybe, you know, there's some sort of combination, you know, that begins to emerge when you start notating in more novel ways. So these are the things that I'm particularly interested in, because there's a sense of universality beyond this. Like, what if there were software that had a nice well, yeah, I maybe, you know, maybe designing software to resolve this problem is premature, because every dance form obviously has very different needs. And so it turns out that Lego is a perfect system for the tutting language system, or the tutting dance system. Anyway, so one of the fun things that Bricklink can do, this thing, is it can render things absurdly beautifully. I think I did a quick pass, but I wonder if I can do like a really great render of a human body going through these things in their sort of abstract shapes, which is really cool. And then I want to talk about virtual reality a little bit more. When it comes to VR, I like to say that there's like one killer app out there. And I tried making something that ended up being similar-ish, but is certainly not the same, or rather touches on some similar aspects. And the thing that I made was this thing called Catch the Beat on itch.io. I wonder if I have video of it. This is a virtual reality experience where you have juggling pins that come in. I don't know if you're going to pick up that audio here. Oh, here.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? A twisted tale.
Okay, so the idea here is that you have a bunch of juggling pins that are being thrown at you, and when they're thrown at you, you have to, okay, I'm going to mute this, because I can't think and talk. So, whoops, that's not muting. So yeah, you have this, like, you have a bunch of juggling pins that get thrown at you, and you gotta catch them to the beat. I do want to listen to it. And then it gets like kind of crazy. There's a lot of really fun patterns later on. Anyway, this is a game that I built because I was interested in trying to figure out, well, how do you notate, how do you coerce the body to sort of do this dancing activity, right? And basically this is that, where I'm saying you gotta hit these beats by the time that these things happen, and I'm providing a lot of kinesthetic, like, okay, like I'm driving you towards this sort of beat-driven activity. And obviously, you know, the thing that I'm talking about, if you are versed in the VR space, that is related to this, is this thing called Beat Saber. It's such a good game. I like to tell people this is sort of the killer app for VR. Basically, you have these bricks that get thrown at you, and you have to whack them at the beat. I'll show you some footage. if it loads. Right. So the idea here is you have to like. This is a dope game. It's so good. What's fascinating though is if you look at the software, Beat Saber, mapping software. Like it's one thing to think about the technology, this game, as a rhythm game, but it's also another thing to imagine that this is actually a movement notation. Like there's something about this, like basically what you do, you're telling people to move in a certain way to a certain beat. You're programming human movement. And that's what I find so fascinating about Beat Saber is that there's beginning to emerge all these different ways. So here's someone like taking a song and they're using some software to produce a beat map, which is a human, which basically visualizes the song on the sideline here, and then you can walk through and type in a bunch of keys.
And you can also...
and these keys, as you walk through, like this is the notation of the song, visually and spatially and graphically. I mean, it's bananas. It's so cool because to extrapolate a little bit further as to where I think this is going. Human movement, okay, human language before the printing press was one thing, and then after printing press it became a completely different thing, right? The ability to take, not only to notate, but to like widely distribute ideas through words is obviously super revolutionary. Imagine what the craft of storytelling was before written language. It was sitting around a fire and talking. And if you wanted to hear a story, you had to go to the source. Music, if there was no notation, I would presume it would be the same thing. If I wanted to learn a new musical craft, I'd have to go somewhere and meet that person. And then once, at some point, music gets notation and you can sort of publish and distribute those notations. And also at some point, music gets recorded media, where you can sort of take music and record it into a file so that you can like play a song into a can and then listen to it on a record later. This is starting to happen with dance, right? This is starting to happen with human movement. And it's certainly not taking like the full, it's very rudimentary at this point. It's not taking the full human range of experience for human movement, but it's taking minute pieces, piecemeal, one by one, and starting to mediate them in ways that are like crazy interesting, in ways that I can't quite comprehend how big it's going to be, I guess. Of course, I take everything that I say with a grain of salt because I'm a dance hyper nerd, who thinks about this stuff, and I'm probably more excited than I should be, but at the same time, like I can't imagine. This is how I like to think about virtual reality. I think about it as, or rather, not virtual reality, but all like novel 3D technologies. I think of it as this is finally a way to capture human movement in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And that it is revolutionary primarily for dance or martial arts or physical therapy or any task that has to do with learning, information transmission of shapes of bodies through time, right? And because of that, in the same way that the entire recording industry and the entire sense of what, like, think of what music was before the recording industry existed, and think of all the amazing and awful things that the recording industry has brought. I suspect that that's going to happen with dance at some point, thanks to all these crazy 3D sensing technologies, 3D render technologies, interactive media technologies that allow us to mediate and transmit human body presence in completely different ways, than ever before, right? I don't quite understand what it's going to do to dance, but I suspect that it will create new genres, and it will create new ways of thinking about it, right? Because like obviously something like dubstep couldn't have happened without recorded music. Like there's no way to do that, right? Human movement's going to be just as disorienting at some point, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. No, I'm personally super excited about it, but I think there's a lot to unpack there over the next few years. So yeah, that is where I'm at. I am super interested in this stuff. I think that's all I wanted to say. I will post this clip with links in the description below, I suppose. All right. Cheers.